to THA Talks, for free thought and open minds.
And for freedom of speech.
Hello, I'm Paul Obitelli and welcome to What's News on THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK. If you'd like to check out our full archive for more talks on conspiracy, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion and much more, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. And if there's anyone who'd like to contact us and give us some feedback, maybe you'd like to recommend a guest for the show, you can email us info@thatalks.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the show via our RSS feed, and you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and many other podcast directories out there. Well, hello everyone. Thanks for tuning in again here for another edition of What's News. And thanks for all your comments on the last show we did with Shams in edition 189 there, a victim of a Me Too witch hunt. We've had some interesting feedback, some people very sympathetic and obviously some not so sympathetic messages that I've read. Just to let you guys know, shortly after that interview we did with Shams, he did actually hear from the New York Police Department who said they've looked into the case. They've watched the supposed evidence in the video that was provided. I think it was a 4-hour long video. And they, as far as they're concerned, the case is closed. It's a completely fabricated claim. And that's that. And we'll be getting Shams on again to speak about it. He said he'd love to come back on and be able to speak more freely and obviously relax a bit more and really go into it and what he thinks of that movement and, not holding back, so to speak, as he felt he may have done so a little bit in that last interview because he was still a little bit worried by it all. But anyway, yeah, that will be coming. We'll look forward to that. But without any further ado, we're going to go and speak with John White now for another edition of What's News. How are you doing, John?
Good evening, Paul. Hello, THA. Oh, it's fun times in Britain, isn't it?
Oh, Tommy.
Yes, it's echoing around the world. What have they done, Paul?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I think one of the important things to remember here, because there's obviously a lot of opinions going on. So many people are outraged and support Tommy, and then there's others saying, look, the guy was on a 3-month suspension. He knew what he was doing. He got what he deserved, yada, yada. I think the important thing we got to remember is this is just an incident in a long line of incidences that I can list where people are getting arrested harshly and certainly convicted and put in prison harshly, a long list. And as we've mentioned in the past, it doesn't matter if you don't like these people or if you think they're doing something in poor tastes. Ultimately, this is freedom being challenged. And it's almost like we've become so immature we can't handle being insulted or hearing people say mean things or things we don't like. And as a result, it's to call the Great Britain a snowflake country at the moment is putting it mildly, because I'm actually quite embarrassed and it's just a bit, oh God, what is happening with this country at the moment? You're kind of on the same page as me, aren't you?
Well, we're very much on the same page here, Paul. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of layers to this. Probably the best thing to do is to start by reviewing the simple facts.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about here is Tommy Robinson, who is a very controversial figure. Stephen Lennon is his legal name. And, to recap for anyone who doesn't know, he was involved in the founding of the EDL, the English Defence League. And that formed in response to radical Islamists being protected by police while hurling insults on Remembrance Day.
Mm.
And that's what led to the foundation of the English Defence League, which, obviously defend English values was kind of what they were about.
Well, the thing is, just so I can interject on that
media.
Basically, the thing is with the English Defence League is what people forget is they're not an organisation, it's a movement. So, and the difference between an organisation, you can say, this is what you've got to be like to be a member. This is what we support. If you're not the way we want you to be, you're out. That's not the case with you. So the English Defence League, of course, you probably get all sorts of riffraff that just turn up for a fight or just want to express their own personal, issues and so on. And then there's, other people that have, but to say that, to treat it as if it's not got a genuine concern. It started in a street movement because people were witnessing in front of their very eyes their towns, their family, where their families live, completely changing into a different place.
Massive.
And so I just think it's important to remember, yes, there are issues with the English Defence League, but it didn't come from nowhere. It come from a very relevant place. It is a leaderless movement, and it can be a menace, but it's relevant. It's saying something.
Quite right, Paul. I think it's important to be fair to EDL members as well.
Yeah,
because they have never been treated fairly by the press. And there are many decent people who are attached to the EDL.
Yeah.
And it certainly wasn't a white-only movement.
Absolutely, yeah.
There are people who are from ethnic minorities who support the values of Britishness, or in this case, Englishness, who supported the EDL, who also didn't want this forced chaos of this forced social change. But be that as it's may, from the history of the way that the press has handled discontent from the working class, which is what the EDL above all else represented, they demonized, and they demonized hard. And in, I think it was 2013, that Tommy Robinson split from the EDL. And at that point, he did say that he felt that it was being infiltrated and taken over by some overtly racist elements. So that's something that Tommy Robinson himself has said about the EDL. Now, being as he had been this focal figure around which people rallied, and that he took that role on, he then got demonized not only in the press, but he got demonized by the system as well. And the police then took to fine tooth combing Tommy's entire life. And as a result of that, they managed to find a technical violation on his mortgage application, which, it comes under the term mortgage fraud. But if you really look at what it was, it wasn't like a deliberate, elaborate, huge fraud. It was, relatively minor thing.
Well, I mean, he's a bit of a naughty boy. But he's not. I mean, there's a difference between being a bit of a naughty boy and being, an evil, nasty, horrible character. He's grown up on the streets of Luton. He's a bit of a geezer. He's got a pair of balls on him. He's in his time. He's liked a bit of a scrap, and he won't turn away from a scrap. But that's just a part of his character. It doesn't mean he's necessarily a really bad person. I think you can see, and a lot of people can see, he's not a bad person. And he does like to be fair. I wouldn't say I relate to him in every way. I have my differences with him, but that's life, But in a lot of areas, he is right. It's simple as that.
Well, he's the sort of personality where if you tell him that he can't do something, he's going to push it to the absolute edge of what he's allowed to do. He's that kind of person. He's gonna take as much space to be himself as he can. But we were talking about this. They got him on a technical violation of his mortgage, and that meant that he was sent to prison. And while he was in prison, he was attacked by Islamic extremist inmates and had to defend himself from an attempted attack with boiling water. So he was nearly very seriously injured, if not killed, while inside prison. Now, then he got out of prison and he began to act as an independent activist journalist, and he also got involved with the Canadian media outlet Rebel Media, and for a time was effectively their sort of United Kingdom street correspondent. Reporting on what was going on in British society. Now, last year, it was actually May last year, Tommy was reporting on a trial in Canterbury. And when he was there, I think, objectively, being fair, he went too far. He pushed it too far. He pushed it to get a picture that he shouldn't have taken, and he got himself on a contempt of court charge. Now then, there was support for him. He got a decent lawyer, and they managed to get this commuted down to a suspended sentence. So now what that means, if anybody didn't know how the British system works, is that if you have a suspended sentence, for the length of time of a suspended sentence, if you do anything else wrong, then you can be sent straight back to prison to serve the full length of the term that you were let off for, which in Tommy's case was 3 months. So on a suspended sentence, if he did anything wrong at all, he could go to prison for 3 months. Now, he's actually been imprisoned for 13 months as a result of what happened in Leeds on Friday the 25th. But that's because the judge Marson, Geoffrey Marson, added another 10 months to his sentence. So, that's why he's now got a prison sentence of 13 months. But we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves. Now, if anybody watches any of the output that Tommy Robinson's done since that Canterbury case last year, you could see that he is aware that he is in a restricted situation. He is trying to be in whatever broadcast I've seen, and I don't watch all of them, but I've seen a few. In whichever broadcast he's in, he is very conscious that he needs to be legally aware, and his lawyers who helped him last year really impressed that on him. So when we actually look at what happened on Friday, that's very apparent. Now, what's weird about what happened on Friday is that, firstly, it was caught live by people following his live stream all around the planet. Because Tommy had been standing away from Leeds Court using just his phone. So it wasn't like he had a camera on his shoulder or anything. He certainly didn't have a camera crew with him. He was on his own. But he was using his phone to do a video report. And people have been watching it. So people have been following it for well over an hour. Now, during that time, there is one point in that footage where a couple of the accused go into court, and Tommy says to him, "How do you feel about your sentencing?" And sort of a journalistic question, to which they abuse him back. And one of the accused, very violently makes sexual motions and says he's going to do something to Tommy's mother. So in terms of a breach of a peace, it wasn't coming from Tommy Robinson. He didn't harangue anybody in a way that was inappropriate. He wasn't trying to incite anything. There wasn't a crowd. He wasn't rabble rousing. So the very idea that all of a sudden 7 police pour out of a court and arrest Tommy while live streaming, for breach of a peace, but they missed camera footage by one of the few bystanders that was there, which have now, of course, has become world famous footage. Also on that live stream, we can see that Tommy is very conscious to be aware of what is and is not court property. And that's important to avoid a contempt of court charge, because he wasn't violating the court space. He wasn't interfering in the court's business. And also, he actually talks to a police officer on that live stream footage who assures him that he's fine as he is, and he isn't causing any problems, and he's fine to be doing what he's doing. So without that live stream footage, the picture would simply be Tommy Robinson is breached for peace and been sent down, and there'd be nothing to say anything different. But with that live stream footage, it becomes quite a different story, and it's absolutely crucial. Tommy was arrested for breach of peace. Now, under the law, you can be arrested for a potential breach of peace, meaning you might not have done anything wrong, but if police have sound reason to think that you might do something wrong, then that is grounds to arrest. But it's not grounds to charge. That's the difference. Because you've still got to show intent. which is the intent to do something wrong. Now, when Tommy was arrested, he asked one of the people there to get him a lawyer. They got through to his people, and they got his lawyer, to get in touch. And the court told the lawyer, "It's all right. There's no need for you to come. Nothing's going to happen today." That was a lie. Now, what happened very swiftly afterwards was that Tommy was put in the dock in front of Judge Jeffrey Marston. Now, it's important to also note there was no jury. There was nobody to be influenced by anything.
He was denied. He was denied his own solicitor as well, wasn't he?
That's what he was denied his own solicitor. He had a court-appointed jobby put on, who would only basically allow him to make a guilty plea, because in a situation of contempt of court, it comes under strict liability, and effectively that means that, okay, you could try and make a representation to the judge, but he's entirely on his recognizance whether he takes any account of it or not. And as long as, if you've technically breached the law, that's it. You basically have no defense. So, Tommy was very swiftly sent down, had another 10 months put on for aggravation. And also, immediately, Judge Marston also put down a press gag order. Now, what then happened was the embarrassment of various publications who had already made an initial publication report, because of course Tommy is a little bit famous, then had to take those down. But if you did the Google search, you could still see the article titles. So there's a whole load of JPEG evidence of this, of how paper after paper after paper gagged this as soon as they heard. But the cat's out of the bag, and once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. And of course, there are people all around the planet who were listening to that live stream. Everybody caught on really quickly. And the very next day, there were hundreds of people in London outside Downing Street, and there seemed to be protests inside London that carried on right across the bank holiday weekend.
I think the main thing, what caused the shock among people and upset a lot of people, is it was so quick. I mean, from the space that he started to record this footage up until the point he was literally sent to prison, I think it was about a 4-hour gap.
Yeah,
and you could kind of let that off. I mean, if it was just if it was his 3 months suspended sentence, you could kind of think they've just chucked him away for 3 months, and you could maybe an extra month or more. But for 13 months, for 4 hours, and the next thing before you know it, boom, he's in jail for 13 months. That's just extreme. We've not seen that type of stuff before. And particularly the fact that they didn't even, I've heard since the judge admitted he hadn't even seen the footage. He admitted he'd only seen a little bit of it. Yeah, a little bit of it. And then they watched it. So it's kind of, it's almost like just the nature of it was just grab this guy and sling him in prison. It was just very,
well, I think for a start, I know for a fact that there have been no end of complaints made to the judiciary, formal complaints about Judge Marston's conduct. So he will be facing an official inquiry. He will have to answer for his decisions that day. But I'd like to read you a little bit here from the judge's statement, which is what's being used by the mainstream media and also by Tommy's political opponents who don't like him because he's a Nazi and a racist and, all of those things. This is what they are hanging their whole case on, to say, there's nothing to this. There's all nothing. Tommy deserves what he's coming to him. From the judge's statements, if my jurors in the present trial get to know of this video, I will no doubt be faced with an application to discharge the jury. If I have to do that, it will mean a retrial costing hundreds of thousands of pounds. A retrial would also mean witnesses in the case would have to face the ordeal of giving evidence again before a jury. Now, that all sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, they've used that to say...
That sounds like a reasonable argument.
Yeah, just to interject there, That's true. I mean, you don't want to see money wasted like that. So in that in itself, it would be bad. Yes, and that's something. That's a very big.
See the trial of his rape gang.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of these people said, "Oh, he could have risked them all getting off." It's like, well, that wasn't really. It was more a case of it would have been a real pain in the arse to do the court case all over again. That's a realistic issue. But let's not pretend that they would have all got off like Tommy nearly made them go. You know, the evidence just stacks up against these guys. It's just a procedure.
I've got some good news, though, Paul. I've got some good news about that very statement that you may not know, which is that on April the 13th, the London Metro, which, you know, is a massive circulation. It's on every bus in the country. You get a free paper of the Metro or trains. It's everywhere. Yeah? They published not only the full names and allegations against every single one of the accused, they also published pictures of at least half of them, including the two that Tommy caught on tape on his own live stream. So the judge is saying that the jury would potentially be prejudiced if they got to see this live stream. But it's all been nationally reported. And Tommy himself was reading from the BBC report from their website that very morning. And the Leeds paper has also published all of his stuff. So, you know, one wonders, is Judge Marson simply ignorant of the publicity his trial's already received?
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is that's worth considering here. I mean, there's certain things I could criticize Tommy about. You know, that I could go into that. We haven't got a long enough show to go into that side of it.
Sure.
Today, I'm going to stick up for him because he's in prison. It's been really dodgy what's been going on, and I'm going to talk about that. But just to give you guys out there, especially those that aren't really in the UK, to touch on the excuse that there was a media reporting ban, and this is so that you don't influence the judge or the jury, and you know it's all very very common sense and makes sense. I can point you to a BBC article called "Rotherham Child Sexual Abuse Claim Made Up to Boost EDL Cause." That was released on May the 22nd of May. Now that was during a trial, and this is just that you get this stuff where you know this is a complete talk about a contradiction. This is a case that was ongoing. The BBC reported about it, criticising some of the witnesses, just basically influencing the perception of this case.
The double standards absolutely horrendous.
Well, this is what basically winds people up. And at the end of this article, the trial continues. You know, and it's this. You constantly see this. It's almost like done deliberately. You know.
No. I mean, you're quite right. I mean, I was going to support you there, Paul, by saying that rape trial after rape trial, the cameras are all over it. I mean, Cliff Richard, the pop singer, there was a mere rumor there might have been cause to believe he could have been involved in some sort of child sex, and the BBC were flying a helicopter over his house where the police were raiding him, hadn't even charged him. And that became very embarrassing when there actually was nothing that they could charge him with, and there was no evidence and there was no case. So, obviously that's very, very personally damaging to Cliff Richard's reputation. But we've seen the mainstream media go over the line time and time again when it suits them. I couldn't tell you the amount of news stories I've read when I go, oh my God, that's not on. They're prejudicing that. Do you remember there was a case, it's a few years back now, of a landlord in Bristol and a woman who was living in the flat, and he lived in the flat above, and she went missing and was found murdered out on some waste ground. And the landlord was suspect number one. And the press really went to town on him, and they found people in his past who were prepared to denounce him as a pervert, etc., etc., etc. And there was absolutely no truth to any of it. What sort of trial could he have got had he been charged with that offence? Because I mean, talk about prejudicing a trial. It's nothing to do with this prejudicing a trial business. I mean, the very fact whether Judge Jeffrey Marson knows it or not, his trial has had massive publicity already, and there wasn't a single detail relayed by Tommy Robinson that hadn't previously been relayed by somebody else. But none of them are in his court for contempt of court.
This is it, and this is why it's outrageous. People can argue the point that technically he has a right to be in prison if you look at the law and so on, and you can argue that case. But the bottom line is there's been no common sense in this trial, the trial that threw him in prison, because you're right, he didn't disclose anything. There was nothing he said about he yelled, "What do you think of the convictions?"
And he was ever so careful to use words like alleged
and so on. Yeah. So it's basic. We know they could, so they did. It was simple as that. And what I think angers people is why. I mean, we've had 15 years where these cases have been ignored. If anything, there should be utmost leniency for this thing, because they should understand that there's a lot of people outraged. And has there? I don't think there has been. As I said, the contradictions are just right out there. They're not even hiding it. I mean, this article on the BBC that I'm telling you about, and at the end it says the trial continues. How can that not be more kicked in people's faces?
The trial has continued today. They've all been back up in court today. It hasn't done anything to impact on the trial.
Yeah, no, not at all.
So, I mean, this is, we're in this situation where we can see that there very clearly is a double standard. And it seems to me hard not to think that they thought, it's that bloody pain in the arse Robinson. Why can't he go away? Hey, it's only him. He's not with anyone. Here's our chance we could get rid of him.
Well,
and it's a very justified suspicion. But the real issue here isn't Tommy Robinson. It's not a Tommy Robinson popularity contest. And I'm quite prepared to say that Tommy should face a fair trial for a charge of contempt of court, one with proper public scrutiny and proper representation. And I think that's what's going to happen, because clearly there will be a retrial now. Whether the media wants to admit it or not, it's going to be very difficult to deny one. So there's all of these sort of factors to it, but it's about due process, and it's particularly about being bound under strict liability, which is actually Napoleonic law, not British common law. We're not talking a 12 good men and true situation here. We're talking a judge who basically is a totalitarian in his own court,
right?
And there's been nobody to hold him in check. There's been nobody to hold him into account, and he has used the law as a blunt, brutal weapon with a great deal of speed.
Well, I think
I've read comments from barristers congratulating the judge on pulling a legal fast one. It showed how it's done. Authority of the court.
Yeah.
But underlying all of this, I mean, for one thing, that upsets me, actually, Paul. I mean, we cope with life, and we don't go around blubbing about things, but it does upset me. But child rape has become so racially politicized. So that you have, on the one hand, you have people going, Tommy Robinson, he only talks about rape when it's Muslims, and on the other hand, you've got people who only talk about rape by white people or won't talk about rape by Muslims. So this division, this racial division, where everyone's been suckered into this mindset when we're trying to defend their vested interest group. I care about the bloody children. And I am known globally as a pedogate campaigner who campaigns against organised child sex abuse. But I mean, that's my issue with Tommy per se, is that he is very one polarity. I mean, if you look at his material, it is all the same thing. He doesn't have an expanded, broader worldview. He doesn't really talk about elite paedophilia or other kinds of paedophilia. What he's trying to do is he's trying to highlight the problems caused by unintegrated Muslims. And it happens to be that child rape gangs are one of those problems.
My argument with that would be, I mean, that's very true point. And But the thing is, that is what he is. He's against the growth of Islamic culture within the country. So he is always going to try to point out the negative aspects. And in fairness, the negative aspects are there. And I think the thing is that what's important, what people do is they make out that he's trying to say every Muslim is like this and that, and he's categorically not saying that. He's just simply pointing out
he's got Muslim supporters.
He's saying when in Rome, do what the Romans supporters do, and it means his point of view is when in Rome, do what the Romans do. If fair enough, if people want to come into the country, he's simply saying our country should be doing a lot more to say no. We're not going to bend to Islamic law. We're not going to give this PC rubbish where we just let people wrap the country around their finger in the name of liberalism and so on. This is Britain. This is how we want it. And that part of him is very right-winged and very stern, and this is what we want. This is what we want. But in other aspects, he's very liberal. I mean, he's got a transsexual in his team, and this is why. I mean, a lot of people say he's alt-right. A lot of the alt-right hate him because he's a Zionist and is very pro-Zion. And there's a fair amount of people in the alt-right movement that are very anti-Zionist. So there's a lot of contradictions in how people like to pigeon him into one area. It's not simple. I think
it depends if you're looking at America or Europe. The balance is different.
Yeah, no, that's true. It is a very broad movement. So there's a lot of views in there, and then obviously the liberals start calling him a Nazi. So he's a very controversial. He's got a fan base that love him. He's got a lot of people on the right that don't like him, and a lot of people on the left that don't like him. But I think I do think it's important. That is his activism. But you are right. I think in terms of everything we need, I think what it is, if I can spit this out, I think what it is a lot of the pedophilia thing going on generally, it's kind of by very powerful institutions that manage to set them up and leave them this way. And the thing is, this grooming gang scandal, that has also got that within it as well, because you've got the police that apparently have I haven't totally researched all that, and I suppose you've got to be careful what you say nowadays. But yeah, I've heard that the police, certain networks were set up and were getting involved in doing it. So,
you could take the problems of child sex abuse and paedophilia and organised networks in the UK, and if you put them against the world, they're pretty minuscule. Although, of course, Britain has got a lot of connections to the global paedogate networks, but in terms of the global scale of human trafficking, child trafficking, organ trafficking, and what we're now discovering about organisations like the United Nations, Oxfam, and other aid organisations, which have actually been involved in this, the trafficking of people from Mexico into the United States. The U.S. Justice Department estimates there's 300,000 child prostitutes inside the United States now. So we are talking about something which is a rot, a deep sickness, a rot inside. It's in the whole of human society. But in terms of what's happened with working class organised child abuse in Britain, although vast majority of rapists are white ethnicity. If you look at rape as a whole in the United Kingdom, if you look at child rape, organised child rape, it's 85% is reckoned to be these Pakistani Asian gangs.
Yeah. Well, this is just it.
Whereas, of course, if you take familial child abuse, abuse within the family, you can just double that again for the whole lot.
This is just it. I think the main thing is with the immigration thing and that is what people forget. We're so brainwashed about how society is now. What we're experiencing now in immigration and have done for many is levels of immigration never seen before in history. We are extreme levels of immigration going on. It's not a natural thing that's always been there. So it's very natural for people to react. Now, what I will say, and I don't know Tommy personally, but when you hear things on the news and when there's debates going on and people say, oh, immigrants prop up the NHS or immigrants are fantastic for the economy, And okay, and if this is all true, I'm not totally clued up in politics, so I'm not totally knowledgeable. But if all that is true, okay, well, that's a fair argument. But it seems that when you then go, well, hang on, there's some communities here that are acting disgustingly, we need to stop that, the negative aspect of it. If we're going to be, multiculturalism is the way forward, then we should be allowed to criticise areas of it. That's not happening. We're allowed to praise it. The moment you criticise it, you are condemned. And even like someone like Tommy, who isn't really a far-right type of figure, he's had far-right, affiliations, and he's lent that way at times in his life because of his views, but he's not really far-right. He's not really a far-right person. And the fact is, even if he was, and now he's making an effort to, bring in more multiracials and some transsexuals into his movement, then then you could argue, even when someone is far right and makes an effort to say, well, I'm gonna make an effort to move more move towards you a bit more, I just want to address these issues. Even then, they're not tolerating it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so
I do. It's a classic can't win. But then of course, those who are against Tommy, including most especially the establishment, are determined not to allow any form of win in any way whatsoever, and that's their biggest fear. That's why they are so afraid of him.
Yeah.
Because it's because he is that voice. But I mean, in general, if you look at what's happened in the country in the last 10 years, firstly, where we are today is the rotten fruit of 10 years ago.
Mm.
Or 10 to 12 years ago, when police in these areas, in these northern towns especially, but I mean, the true scale of his problem is it's in pretty much every major urban area. There's been some aspects of it, even like Telford, which just blew up earlier this year. Suddenly find that there's a massive scandal there, as worst as Rotherham's ever been. So we're still finding out about new instances. We still don't have transparency. But if the police had, if the authorities and the police had focused on the law at the time they found out that the offences were taking place, then yes, it would have been bad, but it wouldn't have been as bad as what we've had, and thousands of children would not have been raped. Whereas just trying to talk about the problem, because the repression of the problem has been so absolute. Last year, the BBC put on a 3-part docudrama, which was called Three Girls. It was very upsetting. It upset me greatly. I mean, the first episode, the first 20 minutes, is actually the most upsetting part of the whole thing. So it hits you right in the face from the beginning. It was strong stuff, but it was all justified, and it was all based on fact. So it wasn't elaborating or fantasizing. It was very careful to actually present the reality of what happened. Now, it wasn't long after that that the chap from Wales, Darren Osborne, hired a van, drove to London, and then played skittles with some very unfortunate people outside Finsbury Mosque, and I think one person was killed and others were injured. So he is seen as an example of far right radicalization. Which obviously that's also on top of the earlier Tommy Mayer, Joe Cox case, which was seen as an issue of far right radicalization. So in terms of the UK state, they seem to see the working class reaction to their failed policies as their biggest threat, more dangerous in fact than Islamist extremists in the Islamic community.
Yeah, they're just hotheads that have been talking about what we've been talking about and getting more and more and more wound up by it. Now, and as you say, the answer is then don't talk about it. You'll wind people up. What kind of a future is that if we can't talk about issues that are directly affecting us and our kids because it will make people too angry? That's where we're at.
That is feeding the radicalization.
Yeah.
It's the fact that Tommy is being repressed increases his credibility.
And I would argue,
and if something actually happens to him inside prison, I can't think of anything more radicalizing potentially than that. So if anything, it is Judge Jeffrey Marson who should be in the dock for.
Sorry, carry on.
If anything, I'll just do a little. If anything, it should be Judge Jeffrey Marson who's on trial for inciting a riot.
Yeah.
By being so aggravating as to abrogate Tommy's rights and due process.
Well, that's very true.
It makes people angry.
The thing is, that's true. My argument is, if a lot, I mean, whenever, and it's not even attacking all Asians or all immigrants, because when an Asian or an immigrant comes up and speaks in support, they're put on a pedestal. It's like, thank you for speaking up. You know, it's not like they're not invited to come along and speak with us and join the protest, because that's not true. You know, when you hear these people speak up and say themselves, I agree, there's an issue and we need to address it, they are put on a pedestal. The thing is, I think,
especially the Sikh community, has been very strong in coming out and supporting, getting action about this corruption, which is what it is, moral corruption.
But if our government, if government authorities, if they were seen as being really, you know, not complaining every time someone get, you know, obviously if every criminal act when someone's killing someone is horrific and they should be punished and it should be condemned, you know, absolutely. But I mean, if they were really looking like they were disgusted and completely intolerant to all this kind of stuff, saying this is abusing our multicultural law, this is not acceptable, anyone seen will get, you know, really reacting, and you would actually get less of that because people wouldn't feel so under threat. They would think our authorities are on top of this. As someone like in Putin, can you imagine him, how he'd be reacting with this? He would be completely intolerant with it, and things would be getting done, and you wouldn't get that. You know, that is what the reason people are doing that.
Yeah, the word feet won't touch the floor springs to mind, you know. But the thing is, there is quite a large Islamic population inside Russia. You know, people don't realise that there is a significant amount of Russians who are historically Islamic in terms of the geography of the areas. But the difference is that they are integrated.
The culture is still the same.
They accept that they're accepting the overall framework of being part of that nation. Whereas, you know, that's part of the whole issue of multiculturalism, is that we haven't had that integration. Instead, we've had protected special characteristics, you know, which have allowed the authorities to go, oh, we can't do anything like that, it was a bit racist, you know, that's what's created this entire situation. You know, by not applying the law at the time the offences were first heard about, by allowing this to fester, and the longer they kept the lid on it, the worse it got. Now the stink has blown up, and in terms of this situation, I think it's important to recognise that although those inside the UK who are against Tommy tend to have actually quite a little England kind of mindset and don't pay attention to the rest of the world very much. In terms of Canada, America, Australia, you know, all of the English-speaking part of the world, Israel, massive support across Europe, Germany, France, Italy. You know, this is an international mess of the first order. Because it makes the British state look like the First Order. Not that I like that particular Star Wars film, but you know, it smacks of state oppression. It smacks of state fascism, and what's happened is that the establishment has been owned twice. It's been owned for the fit up, and it's been owned by the cover up. And right now, the establishment line is simply to stick to those words of the judge. Words that we know are unsound. So, you know, this isn't going to go away. No. And we've got protests. We've got protests in Manchester on Saturday, and then we've got one mounting for the 9th in London. And I think that we are going to see that this is going to escalate. But in the meantime, of course, from the point of view of the clown narrative, you know, the MI6 embedded journalist narrative, you know, they're trying to split support, and Tommy deserved it, Tommy was an idiot, what did he expect to happen, you know, and trying to hide the stink, while the rest of the world is looking at Britain holding its nose and going, your country stinks.
Well, it's been a long list, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, we've had Count Dankula, I think his name is. That was just a ridiculous. I'm quite pleased to see he's managed to collect about $100,000 to appeal his case. He's already given the £800 to charity. He's going to refuse to pay it in appeal, with his money. He's got some good lawyers that he can do that. So that's really great news. I think he's doing that's thumbs up to Count Duncan.
Well, yeah, but he's had to stand up for himself.
There's a long list of other ones as well. I mean, there's obviously you can get controversial cases. You've got Jez Turner's case where he was jailed for a year, 6 months suspended. And, people can say, oh, terrible views, this or that, but it's freedom of speech. And I think what he said was a few years back, back before all this sort of authoritarian measures were stepping up and stuff, so I think he didn't realise the playing field he was on at the time. But, it just doesn't look good. There's another case with Alison Chabloz, who was a musician on YouTube, sort of playing cheeky songs, denying the Holocaust denial songs, or I'm not too sure actually, but just what was deemed as anti-Semitic, and she's been found guilty, so she's going to be convicted on the 14th, and it just feels wrong to be convicted for singing offensive songs. When I was growing up, there was offensive songs. You can find them now, really deeply offensive songs, and you just turn the channel off, you walk away. Or you write a song and throw it back at them. Even if some of my family passed away in a horrible situation, and someone was making fun of it and attacking it, I wouldn't expect them to have their free speech taken away. I'd give them what's for. And this is it. This is just the problem. It's this whole thing that you can't say offensive things. You can say offensive things. It's just the law's now been taken that you literally can't. And we've said it over and over again on the show, and it's incredibly dangerous times, even if there's people saying something you don't like. It's wrong. Britain First as well, them going down for what they've been doing. It's just, we're seeing the jailing of opposing political ideas, and this whole hate crime business. It's ridiculous, because a crime is a crime. You don't just have a hate crime. That to me means that the hate is the crime, and that's the playing field we're on now. It's not just a case. Any crime is a crime. If it's against the law, it's a crime. You should be convicted. Hate crime, because you sang that song with a hateful tone, and you look like you hated someone when you sung it. We're going to fine you or put you in prison. And then all of a sudden you're on a ground where it's someone's opinion on you and what you've done, rather than what you've actually done. And it's just snowflake. It's just the biggest snowflake society we're living in, where people are happy to jail people for saying things they don't like. I mean, really think about that. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Well, look, I mean, a cynic would say that hate crime was simply a way of repressing protests from the lower orders. Because whatever protests the bottom level of society has about what have you done to our communities, what's life like now, what are we having to try and live with, any of that, define that as hate, repress it, shut it down, and keep control. And this isn't just a Britain issue. This is a global issue, because this is a globalist issue. And we're seeing that especially in the social media, where social media is not censored on the basis of is something lawful or not, but on the basis of does it offend somebody? And in terms of Twitter and Facebook, does it offend us personally as the companies? So these are not unbiased platforms. These are partisan platforms with a social change agenda, which they're pushing very hard. Now, Dankula is a major case, and as you say, he got a win, because he avoided jail and got his fine, and he's appealing that and so forth and so on. But to quickly review that, I mean, this is the chap who a bit of a comic. Who, by the way, would consider himself to be left-wing in terms of his politics, who basically wanted to wind his girlfriend up. So in order to wind her up, he thought, well, she loves this pug dog. It's the cutest thing ever. I'll wind her up by making out that he's evil. What's the most evil thing I can make that dog into? Oh, a Hitler supporter. And, of course, the dog raises his paw when offered a treat. as dogs do. It's a little trick he's been taught. Poor, you know. So he used that and made it into a Nazi salute, you know, and had gas for Jews playing in the background or something, or he's saying gas for Jews. Now that was, he didn't intend that to be a massive viral video. It was just a joke for his girlfriend and his close friends. But it went viral, and that's why he found himself in court. And unfortunately, a very serious trap, a very serious legal trap, is being constructed right now, because in August, the new sentencing guidelines for hate speech law will be approved. Now, these changes mean that you can face up to 6 years in prison for a singular social media post. And the way that this works is, if you make a post that is offensive, that can be a fine in itself, or it can be a short prison sentence. But if that post goes viral, like Dankula's did, that becomes aggravated. So Dankula would be up for 6 years, no problem. Whereas if you make a post and then you try and get it seen by reposting it on multiple platforms, like Tommy Robinson does, that would also be pretty much an automatic 6-year sentence. Now, those who are against what they see as the far right, and of course they think Dankula's far right because they don't think, you know, but you know that's what they think this is about. Oh, we've got to stop the far right. You know,
they haven't got a right to stop the far right. What they don't
realise is that this trap is for them as well. Now, we talked about Tommy's support of Israel, and as it happens, I would consider myself to be a friend of Israel, in that I recognise Israel exists. I recognise Israel has a right to continue to exist. Now, whatever the problems are in that area, the continuation of Israel is not negotiable. You know, that's my position. Whatever solution comes to the Middle East, Israel's continued existence has to be part of it. Now, the political left in the UK have a very different view, and in part because of the increasing Islamic population, representing a targetable voter base, and in terms of how the Islamic world tends to view Israel, it's meant that the left has become infected with anti-Semitism. To such an extent that inside I call it a cult. Inside Momentum, you know, it's pretty much virulent, but it's also the Green Party is riddled with it as well, because it's a matter of being so polarized, being so pro-Palestinian, that you basically take the position that Israel shouldn't exist at all, and they should go and move to the middle of America or something. You know, I mean, whatever ridiculous stuff.
Perhaps if people start jailing them, they'll start listening. You know, because it's at the moment it's always been on the right, and as I say, you know, I don't think anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or anything should be illegal. You can attack it, and you can throw it off your platform, and you can say, I don't like you, I think anti-Semitism's immoral, you know, get out my sight. You can be disgusted with it and not agree with it and condemn it, but it shouldn't be illegal. Everyone, you know, this is, you don't have a little bit of free speech, you know, and it's it would be tempting to be delighted if I found someone on the left getting a taste of that, you know, behind bars because of being anti-Semitic or something.
I think
I don't want to make that mistake.
I mean, well, in terms of what is and isn't appropriate speech, I mean, my view is I take the classic common law view, you know, which is that you don't lie, you don't steal, and you don't harm. You know, so if you went around saying XYZ group should all be killed, then that's unlawful, because you're asking for a crime to be committed. You're asking to murder people or hurt people, do violence upon people. That's unacceptable. That's a crime under common law.
That's right.
But
Absolutely.
But it's all right to say, I don't get on with Jews very well.
Yeah.
That's not a crime. That's just a personal choice, you know.
Well, that's it. I mean, And it's this whole identity politics thing. It's a lot of the time it's very hypocritical anyway. I've seen at Antifa rallies people holding up pictures saying "kill white people," and where's the hate crime in that?
Getting absolutely terrible out of them. It was so offensive and so racist and so bigoted, and coming from this middle class snobbery. But we come back to this question of context. It's ever so important because when Tommy was in that dock, obviously he was shocked. He wasn't, what the heck? He was expecting to be remanded over a weekend. Not banged up there and then in a quick fit-up trial. I mean, he must have been frightened, bless him. I can empathise with him. I would have been frightened. I think anybody would have been, really. And he tried to defend himself. The judge says, but I didn't mean to do that. Disallowed. Context is irrelevant. If you're seen to have crossed that line, we're into strict liability, which is Napoleonic, globalist, changes to our legal system brought in by being part of the European Union. And this 6 years prison for social media is being imported from the globalist testing ground of Malaysia. So Malaysian law is being transported to Britain, and it's being done on a quiet. It's being done with zero national debate. In fact, the Times and the Telegraph both printed stories about this, deleted. So we've got censorship of the coverage that has gone on, and we are 3 months away, less than 3 months away, and they must be thinking, we'll fix that lot.
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of selfishness out there because there's a lot of people on social media. They're thinking all this fuss is not affecting me. I don't feel the need to complain about it online or anywhere because I'm okay. The ones that do, they're the riffraff. And it's going to come back and sting them because when all that riffraff is in the gulag, then maybe you will have more to moan about because then they'll be on your
system
case.
Servers, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah.
It's system servers, and they think, they think the system is on their side, which is about as stupid as you can get.
Yeah. Once they've mangled everyone else, all those extremists that you may not like, once they're in the gulags, and then the next in line, and then the next in line, and if you think that life's going to be peachy for you just for sitting down and not doing anything, you get the nation and the leaders you deserve, not just by sitting on your backside and expecting everything to be dandy. When there's problems, you've got to stand up and say something. This is wrong, and that even if you're having to defend things that perhaps you don't agree with. I don't agree with everything that with certain people I've pointed out in this show, today, but I believe in freedom of speech and that needs to be defended. Even for the extremists. Unfortunately, I wish there wasn't as many Islamic extremists in the country. I would have stopped it a long time ago. But now they're here. We have to defend their free speech as well because I'm not going to let them use that.
But then it doesn't. They don't have to say very much before they're inciting a crime.
Yeah,
because of what they say.
That's true.
Yeah. So we have the law to deal with it, but we don't have the will to use the law that we have. And instead, we're having bad globalist law imposed instead, which is going to cause carnage. Now, we need to talk about Twitter, but also Facebook. But let's talk about Twitter.
Yeah.
Now, I actually took part in a viral meme group called Operation Mayflower, which was run from America. And the idea was that thousands of people used their Twitter accounts at the same time to send memes to the same people. And what this did was it allowed us to break out past the ghost ban algorithm. Because you've got an individual post might be chilled and not seen, but if you've got thousands of posts, some of them have to get through. So this group was, say, picking a target like Hillary Clinton, and everybody was posting a Twitter account at the same time. And what we saw was that something like 40,000 memes were sent from around the world at that arranged time, and about 4,000 got through. And we've got the analytic data to prove the censorship algorithm on Twitter is running at 90% repression. So if your views don't suit the globalists, 90% of the time, you're not getting seen by anybody unless they directly follow you. And they've isolated the political groups from each other. But it means that the people on the left don't know what the people on the right know. And the people on the right, unless they're like me and go and read the left, don't know what's on the left. So we are being deliberately separated, and then our offence is being used to repress everybody. Now, as a result of my subversion of being part of that Operation Mayflower, I have not just been banned from Twitter, I've been expunged from Twitter. And they've actually targeted my IP address. So it's now impossible to even view Twitter from my home. Which means that I'm probably, high on a target. And as you know, some of my articles have been repressed by spooky activities causing cyber attacks on websites and things like that.
So is THA now as well.
I've managed to make quite a signal out of myself, which I don't mind because, as you say, freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And my speech, Paul, and you will never find unlawful speech from me, ever.
Yeah.
There isn't a sniff of racism or intolerance or hatred anywhere in anything I've ever put on the internet since I started to use it. But that doesn't mean that I'm not an enemy of the agenda. But we are seeing our first evidence that the enemies of the agenda are far wider spread than people think. Now, I've got an article here which was published yesterday. Twitter is banning women who speak out against trans ideology. So what you've got here is you've got feminists, and there's an argument between the feminists and the transsexuals. Because if you're trans rights, and you want right to identify as a woman, even if you're genetically male, even if you still have male genitalia, and then access to women-only areas and so forth, and women who are strong feminists understandably have been objecting to this. But basically, for statements like the penis is a male sexual organ, men are male, he's a man, male mammals produce sperm, these are all statements which have been getting these feminists banned off Twitter. Now, they've actually been quite smart. Very good luck to them, in that they have sent an open letter to Martha Lane Fox, who's a UK lord, but who's also on the board of Twitter. So they've managed to get themselves press attention. But you and I know, and a lot of people listening to the show are going to know, but the censorship on social media is so huge, it's absolute. But here's an example of a group that would not necessarily be expected to be getting caught up in it. And I could tell you now, anybody who's on that Palestine Live Facebook group or is involved in the anti-Semitic areas of the Labour Party, get worried. Get worried fast, because they're coming for you. Just as they're coming for these feminists, just as they're coming for people who support Tommy Robinson. Yeah. Anybody who criticises the establishment, from the left or the right, anybody who challenges the globalist supremacy,
absolutely,
is a target.
Well,
and if this isn't stopped, and I don't know if we can stop it, because the time is so short, and as I say, there's no momentum on it. Then we're going to see a carnage take place. People are going to be really shocked and upset, and they're going to get scared, and they're going to realise what's been going on. But also, there's going to be a report war, as the left and the right out-report each other like crazy. And we saw Facebook trialed a feature where underneath a post they put, "Is this offensive?" And what happened was, as soon as they put that on, everybody on the right went and targeted everybody on the left, and then Facebook had to very quickly turn it off because they had thousands of reports of wrong people they didn't want to target.
Yeah.
But we are so close to this. We are, and it is frightening to an extent. It would be wrong not to at least be sensibly concerned.
Well,
it does raise the question.
You can see it already. Someone like you or myself or someone else that uses the platform political debate, you can just hear one of us getting banged up for 6 years, and everyone's arguing. Saying, "Well, they know the rules."
Oh,
And it's
yeah,
like,
break
oh,
any of the rules.
okay. So when the rules are that, you're only allowed to eat once a week and whatever, if they came up with something like that, you've got to respect the law. We're getting to the stage where these laws are starting to change our constitution and what we've always stood about. And, I mean, people are starting to now. I mean, this whole Tommy Robinson thing, and they're starting to wake up to it. And perhaps that's why they put him inside. But it's starting, but it's still not quick enough. There's too many people
got
that
Tommy
are
inside, and we've also got the leaders of Britain First inside, Jada and Paul. They must feel that they're shutting down a whole movement, but the reality is very different.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, more people have been speaking up about it that I know now. There's more and more people. And as I say, to an extent, you've got to put away political orientation to an extent. I mean, I know there's always going to be division there, but the bottom line is this is about leadership, and it's deeper than just the Tory government or whoever is in power. It's who's controlling it.
Who are the Tory government sucking up to, Paul?
Yeah.
Bilderberg.
Yeah, I mean they're not a conservative government. They're not at all. What have they conserved? They can't even.
It's standing with the EU and in all respects. They don't want to leave the EU. They don't want the working class to have their say. They don't want the country to be run for the benefit of the people. They want the country run for the benefit of themselves.
That's right. Yeah.
And this is the ideological struggle at the centre of British society right now. And with Brexit still up in arms, and there's still lots of confusion about that and everything else. There's a serious lack of clarity in British society. At the moment, with these continuing protests about what's happened to Tommy Robinson, that could very well escalate into a movement that will force political change over this summer. Hopefully, entirely peacefully and non-violently. But that might not happen. In which case, if it becomes dangerous to speak on social media, then people are either going to shut up altogether, or they're going to start speaking in society where they actually got more freedom to speak.
Or perhaps
that could see society become far more at risk of civil disturbance and mass non-compliance and various forms of chaos of different kinds, and overreactions by the police, and God help us if they send the army in. But then with the crime rate in London, how are they going to get that under control? Because London is fast becoming Johannesburg in terms of its murder rate. So there isn't a way in which we could say that Britain's in a happy place. I really wish there was. But because of how people have been conditioned, manipulated, and encouraged to divide, and whether it's the right or the left that have the upper hand in forming the government, it's very hard to see that there's any potential government that could speak for the nation.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So fractured has British society become. So we are in difficult times, and unfortunately, it's the truth tellers that tend to get shut up first when things get difficult. So, people who create content. I mean, if you really boil it down, the amount of people who create content compared to the amount of people who share content is tiny. I saw some research that suggested that fewer than 100 Twitter accounts shifted the whole national debate during 2014. That's how powerful a message of truth that cuts through the BS can be. So I'm not surprised they want to repress people like us and other groups. I don't know, Paul. We are coming to that point where a choice will have to be made to risk the almost certainty of causing offence and therefore risking being had up on a charge and put in prison. Versus is it actually safe to use the internet at all? I wish we weren't there, and I'm not saying which way I'm going to go, but I do know that come August, I'm going to have to make a decision based on how the situation is.
Yeah.
What am I prepared to do? And that question is going to be there for everybody.
Yeah.
So, if you want to say Britain's in trouble, if you want to say put a warning out, this is the real underlying problem, of which Tommy Robinson and what's happened to him is only a symptom.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is very, very worrying. And the thing is, I think the thing is, people have just in this modern society are just too selfish. We don't think collectively. We think that it's just fanatical individualism. As long as I'm okay, then I'm going to ignore it. And yes. I don't think that's going to work, because I think it's that's the trap in itself. Whereas people look at people like the people that are following Tommy, and they look at them as knuckle draggers and something. They're actually very intelligent, because they've still got their instincts intact. When they're going down the road going, "Whoa, Tommy," that's about unity. It's about a collective combining together to be powerful. And that's what a nation should be. We should, when things like this happen, we reject it so much that the leaders go, whoa, we're not going to be able to do this. At the moment, our leaders are sitting up with their feet on their tables with a cigar, laughing.
It's working class culture.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And the snobs, the elites, they hate the working class culture. They hate the idea that
they've got the money that they don't need to be a part of the riffraff.
If that happens, they've got problems, and they don't want problems.
They've got the money that they don't need to be a part of the riffraff, because we've got a wonderful big garden and a wonderful job, and we don't need to be singing Tommy Robinson things, because we can afford to get out of a danger, and we can just move to another country if we need to,
or the Cotswolds, or whatever. That's the whole issue. Is that those who are above a certain point in society, principally university degree educated with that level of income, have been insulated from the negative effects of the disastrous social policies. They've not paid any of the prices, and they don't want to hear about the problems.
All the immigrants I meet are all very wealthy and charming, so it's not my fault that you meet all the riffraff, is it?
Yes, well, yes, quite. Well,
we are at that stage.
I think we've got into the depths of this issue, Paul.
Yeah, no, we are at that stage.
I hope this is, sort of giving people a bit of a wake up, really, about the scale of the issues facing Britain today.
Mm. Well, no, it's been another delightful hour speaking with you, John. Is there anything you'd like to just chuck out here at the end? Anything else?
Well, yeah, I wish I could give people a more optimistic assessment of where Britain is today. But regardless, values win through in the end.
Yeah.
And know yourself. Be true to yourself, and you won't go far wrong in life. And these are the lessons that we must now face, and we must try to form as much unity as possible. In the States, one of the things with the Q movement, the Patriot movement, the MAGA movement, has been WWG1 WGA. Where we go one, we go all.
Yeah.
In terms of the protest in support of Tommy Robinson, that philosophy is alive and well, and that is a beacon of hope.
Mm.
If we either stand together or we fall apart. I can think of no better final message for this podcast than that.
No, I think and I'll add that if you all stand together, then they're not going to be able to build a big enough gulag to put us all in there. So let's keep our spirits high, stay positive. At the end of the day, I'm sure they'd like us to feel defeated, and in this crazy whatever they're doing, whatever this is leading to, whatever they're trying to do, it's a big universe out there, and I'd like to think there's always amazing things around the corner. So let's finish on a positive note. I think no matter how bad things are and where we're heading, sometimes being positive, you've got nothing to lose for that, and sometimes if things do get bad, it reminds you of the things that matter in life anyway, and we become detached from the stuff that have probably been imprisoning us in a way anyway. So keep your spirits high. I'm going to try my best. Yeah.
Yes, well, God bless everybody.
Yeah.
And yes, this is the time to be that awakened person that we've been striving to be for many years. Because these are the times that this change needs to happen, and we are not alone. There is a whole world out there, and they do care deeply about what happens in Britain. Just as I care, just as so many of us care deeply about what happens in the United States, and there's serious progress now being made with the takedown of that deep state. And if anybody can bring Twitter and Facebook to heel, you better believe it's Donald J. Trump.
Oh, that sounds like another show. So, we'll go there.
It will be very soon.
Yeah.
Yes, we could do one next week probably.
That sounds
It's
brilliant.
major development.
That sounds very good. Okay, then we will wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please keep telling your friends about the show, linking the show, and more importantly, keep downloading the show. Till the next time, we'll be seeing you. Bye.